Hello, welcome to the Wealth Starting Line. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to peel back all the political speeches and get right to the heart of this huge but kind of simple question. Where does a country's money actually come from?
You hear this promise all the time, right? Especially when elections are coming up. All make our country rich. But what does that even mean? Behind all that talk, what are the real, actual levers a government can pull to make that happen?
Well, it turns out it's a lot more than just collecting taxes. A country's financial engine really has, let's say, three main cylinders firing all at once. We're talking about taxes, debt, and trade. So let's break each one down. All right, first up, let's start with the one we're all pretty familiar with, maybe a little too familiar with, taxes. This is really the foundation, the bedrock of how any government pays its bills. So, what are we really talking about? The keywords here are mandatory fees. These are the fees that citizens and businesses have to pay to fund all the stuff a society needs to run. I mean, think about it. It's the money that literally keeps the lights on for our country. It pays for roads, schools, national defense, you name it. And look, the government isn't just dipping into your paycheck. It's really a whole collection of different streams pouring into one big pot. You've got income tax, sure, but also corporate taxes on company profits, sales tax every time you buy something, property taxes, and even tariffs on goods coming in from other countries. It all adds up. Okay, but here's the thing. Taxes alone, they're almost never enough to cover everything. I mean, think about massive infrastructure projects or, unexpected crises. So what happens then? Well, that brings us to our second big pillar, national debt. Now, this is a super important point because we're all taught that personal debt is scary, right? But for a country, it's different. National debt works on a completely different logic. It's not like a maxed out credit card. It's much more like a strategic tool, an investment that's backed by the entire future earning potential of the whole country. So how does the country actually borrow all this money? Well, it sells these things called bonds, which are basically just fancy IOUs. And who's buying them? It could be anyone, really. Pension funds right here at home, big banks, even other countries that are just looking for a safe place to invest their money. They give the government cash now, and in return, the government promises to pay them back later, with a little extra on top, of course. Yeah, you can see it's this whole cycle. The government needs a big chunk of cash. It puts out these bonds. Investors buy them up. Boom, the government has money right now to get stuff done. And those investors, they get paid back down the road. It's really a way of borrowing from the future to invest in the present. But, of course, countries don't just exist in their own little bubbles. And that brings us to the third major way a nation makes its money, and that's by playing on the world stage. We're talking about international trade. This is all about what a country can sell to everyone else. It could be cars, software, agriculture, anything really. And a country's wealth here is all tied up in this huge global balancing act between what it sends out, its exports, and what it brings in, its imports. I'm sure you've heard the term trade deficit thrown around in the news a ton. All it means, really, is that a country is buying more stuff from other countries than it's selling to them. Simple, right? But that imbalance, well, it can look very different depending on which side you're on. So take a look at country A here. They're in what we call a trade surplus. See how that exports bar is higher than the imports bar? That means more cash is flowing into the country than is flowing out. A lot of people see this as a sign of a really strong, healthy export economy. Okay, now let's flip it and look at country B. They're buying way more than they're selling. That big gap, that's your trade deficit. Now, the million-dollar question, and believe me, it's one of the hottest debates in all of economics, is whether a trade deficit is automatically a bad thing. And all of this brings us to the real heart of the challenge. Running a national economy isn't about just picking one of these things and maxing it out. No way. It's this incredibly delicate, high-stakes balancing act between all three. Because, as you can see, each of these pillars comes with its own major risk. If you tax too much, you might choke off economic growth. If you borrow too much, you could end up in a massive debt crisis. And if you mess up your trade relationships, well, you could find yourself in the middle of a trade war. And that's exactly why this whole conversation matters so much. These aren't just abstract numbers. The choices leaders make about taxes, debt, and trade have very real consequences for everybody's wallet. It is the ultimate economic tightrope walk. So that leaves us with the big question, right? What is the perfect recipe? Is there some magic formula, some perfect mix of taxes, debt, and trade that just guarantees a country will be rich and prosperous?
Well, the simple and maybe frustrating truth is there isn't one. There's no single right answer. Every single country has a different strategy, and that strategy is being argued over and tweaked in capitals all over the world every single day. But now that you get the three pillars, taxes, debt, and trade, you can follow that debate a whole lot better, and maybe even decide for yourself what you think makes the most sense.
For watching, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time.